Christians pray against him, atheists laugh at him. But 2,000 years ago, a group of mystics had already discovered what Carl Jung would prove in 1951. The devil is not a being outside of you. He is every part of yourself you refuse to admit exists. And as long as you keep searching for him out there, he rules your life from in here. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will understand three things. First, who the devil actually was before Christianity turned him into a horned god of evil. Second, what the Gnostics knew that the Church spent 1,500 years trying to bury. And third, most important, how this devil is operating in your psyche right now, today, costing you the life you actually want. This is not a video about religion versus atheism. This is about something much older and much deeper than either. This is the oldest psychological map of evil ever drawn, and how Carl Jung rediscovered it in the 20th century without even knowing he was retracing the steps of heretics. Let's begin. The figure most people call the devil is a relatively recent invention. The Old Testament Hebrew word has Satan literally means the adversary, the accuser. In the book of Job, Satan is not an enemy of God. He is a member of God's heavenly court, doing a very specific job, testing humans. Then something happened. Over centuries, this courtroom prosecutor was slowly transformed into a horned monster, the source of all evil, a fallen angel waging cosmic war against heaven. Why? Because Christianity needed an enemy. A religion that holds its God is all good cannot explain why bad things happen, unless someone else is to blame. So the devil grew horns, he grew a tail, he became responsible for every sin you didn't want to take responsibility for. Lust, the devil. Anger, the devil. Pride, the devil. Doubt itself, of course, the devil. And here is the trap. Every time you said the devil made me do it, you handed away your power. You stopped looking at the real source of your darkness. You projected it outward onto a cosmic scapegoat, while the actual force you were running from took root and grew inside you unwitnessed. This is exactly the trap the Gnostics warned about 2,000 years ago. In the 1st and 2nd centuries of the Common Era, a group of Christian mystics taught something so dangerous that the Church declared them heretics and tried to erase them from history. We only know they existed because in 1945, an Egyptian farmer named Muhammad Ali al-Saman accidentally unearthed a sealed jar in the desert near Nag Hammadi. Inside was a library of texts the Church had outlawed. These were the Gnostics, and what they taught was this: the God most people worship is not the highest God. There is something above this God, a true source. And the deity we know from Genesis, who walks in gardens and demands obedience, is something else. The Gnostics gave him names. They called him the demiurge, the craftsman. They called him Yaldabaoth, the dark child. And in one of their most provocative texts, they called him Saklas, which in Aramaic means the fool. The fool, land, Saklas, the fool god, blind to what he is. He looks at his creation and says, "I am God, and there is no other." But he is wrong. He is a copy of a copy, an emanation that has forgotten its source. Now stay with me, because this is where it gets psychological. The Gnostics taught that this fool god had servants. They were called the archons, and the archons were not external demons. They were forces inside the human psyche, patterns of thought, emotion, and reaction that keep you trapped in the dream the demiurge wove. Read those names again. Saklas, the fool, the blind one, the one who is wrong about himself. And then read what Carl Jung discovered 1800 years later. He wouldn't use this language. He didn't have to. He found in patient after patient, in dream after dream, a figure that fits Saklas precisely. He called it the shadow. In 1951, Carl Jung published a book called Aion, and in it he wrote something that would have gotten him burned at the stake 5 centuries earlier. He said the Christian concept of evil was psychologically false, not because evil doesn't exist, but because evil, as a being outside the self, is a projection, a defense mechanism, a way the psyche refuses to look at what it cannot bear to see. The shadow, Jung wrote, is the part of yourself you have disowned. Everything you cannot accept about who you are, your rage, your envy, your laziness, your selfishness, your cruelty, your weakness, does not disappear when you reject it. It goes underground. It becomes autonomous. It runs your life from beneath your awareness. And eventually, this is the key, it gets projected outward onto other people, onto enemies, onto the world. This is why the devil has been such an effective psychological figure for 2 millennia. He gives you somewhere to send your shadow. Every time you say they are evil, I am good, you have just performed the devil's most cunning trick. You have made yourself believe the darkness is out there, and in doing so, you have given that darkness, the one living inside you, permission to do whatever it wants. Jung saw this clearly. He watched it happen in entire nations. He saw Germany in the 1930s project its collective shadow onto the Jewish people, then onto enemies abroad, then onto neighbors, and the more they projected, the more monstrous they became, because the shadow you refuse to own owns you. The Gnostics had a word for the moment you finally see your own shadow clearly. They called it gnosis, direct knowing, not belief, not faith. Knowing, because you have looked at the thing you were running from and discovered it was you all along. So let me bring this out of theory and into your actual life. Your personal devil, your unowned shadow, is operating right now in 3 places. Watch for them. The first place, your enemies. Make a list of the people who most disturb you. The colleague whose ambition makes your skin crawl, the relative whose neediness you find pathetic, the public figure you cannot stop hating. Now ask yourself, honestly, what are they doing that you secretly want to do? What are they showing about themselves that you would never let yourself show? Your most charged enemies are not random. They are mirrors. They are your shadow, walking around in someone else's body. The second place, your reactions. When something happens that triggers a response disproportionate to what occurred. When a small remark sends you into rage. When a minor setback drops you into despair, that is the shadow speaking. The size of the reaction tells you the size of the unintegrated material. A small event has touched a large, hidden wound. The third place, and this is the hardest, your idealizations. The people you put on pedestals carry your shadow too. In reverse, if you idolize someone for their confidence, you have disowned your own. If you worship someone for their freedom, you are imprisoned within yourself. The Gnostics warned that the demiurge's trap was not only to make you fear what was inside you, but to make you worship it outside you. Both moves keep the soul asleep. Notice, in none of these 3 places does the devil look like a horned man with a pitchfork. He looks like irritation. He looks like contempt. He looks like envy. He looks like an obsessive thought you cannot shake. He looks utterly ordinary, which is exactly why he has been so effective at hiding for 2,000 years. So what do? How do you defeat a devil who is yourself? You don't. That is the first answer. You cannot kill the shadow. Anyone who has tried, through asceticism, through suppression, through holy war against their own desires, has discovered Jung's iron law. What you resist persists. What you suppress eventually explodes. The Gnostic answer was different, and it matches Jung's almost perfectly. They said, the way out is through. You must descend. You must look the demiurge in the face. You must meet Saklas the fool, and recognize him as a part of yourself that needs witnessing, not destruction. In practical terms, this means 3 movements. First, name what you have disowned. Pick one person who disturbs you intensely. Ask, what quality in them am I refusing in myself? Write it down. The naming is half the work. The shadow loses most of its power the moment it is seen clearly. Second, find the gift in the rejection. There is no shadow trait without a hidden gift. The aggression you suppressed contains the assertiveness you need. The selfishness you despise contains the self-care you starve yourself of. The shadow is not evil, it is rejected energy. And rejected energy, when integrated, becomes power. Third, and this is the Gnostic move that Christianity never made, stop looking up. Stop waiting for a God outside you to save you from yourself. The Gnostic teaching was that the divine spark is already inside you, not earned, not granted, yours. The work is not to become worthy of salvation. The work is to wake up to what you have always been. This is gnosis. This is what Jung called individuation. Becoming the whole person you were always meant to be, including the parts you tried to leave behind. So the devil is not evil. He is the rejected pieces of your own soul, demanding to be witnessed. Every culture that ever took the psyche seriously has known this. The Gnostics named him Saklas, the fool god who didn't know himself. Jung named him the shadow. Buddhism calls him Mara. Different masks, same figure, and the same answer in every tradition. Turn around. Look at him. Stop running. The moment you do, something extraordinary happens. The devil, fully seen, dissolves, because he was never a being. He was a refusal, your refusal, to know yourself completely. The Gnostics preserved a saying in the Gospel of Thomas. Listen carefully. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. That is not a metaphor. That is the most precise psychological instruction ever written. Carl Jung spent 60 years trying to translate it into modern language, and in the end he said exactly what the Gnostics said in the 2nd century. The path to becoming whole runs through the territory you most do not want to see. So I leave you with one question. The next time you feel hatred rise towards someone, really feel it. Pause. Don't fight it. Don't deny it. Just ask, what part of myself am I meeting right now? That question, asked honestly, is the beginning of gnosis. If this resonated with you, the next step is to understand how the 7 archons, the Gnostic shadow forces, show up in your daily life as specific psychological patterns. I'll be releasing that video next. Subscribe so you don't miss it. The books and primary sources I drew from for this video are linked in the description below for anyone who wants to go deeper than YouTube can take you. And remember, the devil you fear out there is the door you have not yet opened in here.